She cooks nothing but chuck wagons, stew, and her name is Minerva. Ouch! She's the flower of the devoured goats.
Reports of my demise have been greatly exaggerated. I am back. So you can tell I still got a little bit going on with my voice. It's amazing how you can never get all that sick, but at the same time, it just lingers forever. This little annoying cough and a little bit of stuffiness and just like, but I said, you know what? I've taken an entire week off. I got to do the show. I've got to do the show. So I'll tell you what I was doing though earlier today. I thought, I'm going to take today off from drawing because I've just been grinding for the past 2 weeks. And we're working every day. And I was like, maybe I'll just chill a couple hours before, went to church. And then I'm like, I'm just going to chill. But then I started thinking, you've got the ending of the Wraith of God 3 script needs some work. And because I like to plot it all out, right? And then do like an outline. And then I'll write some script. And then I'll draw some, then I'll write some script, and then I'll draw some. And it gives me longer time to think about plot problems and things like that maybe it didn't occur to me when I first laid the whole thing out. And so basically I write it in sections or finished scripting in sections. So I had the last, 15 pages or so that hadn't been scripted yet. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to work on that. And I did, and I got about 10 more pages scripted. And I'm telling you, you guys, you are going to love this. This ending is, whoa. So, yeah. Back Wraith of God 3 if you haven't yet, because you don't want to miss this. That's all I can say. Okay, I don't know how long I'm going to go. We'll see how long my voice lasts. And I've got some stuff. We've got some interesting stuff to look at and talk about today, but I don't have as loaded as show in terms of different variety of subject matters I generally do, because, well, quite frankly, I'm not sure how long this Jack the Ripper thing is going to take. We might go down a rabbit hole on that one. So, but it's very interesting. At least I think it is, and hopefully you will find it somewhat interesting as well. So anyway, let's see who's here. Let's get this show on the road. Creative Face here says, hi, Aaron, glad to see you're feeling better. I got my book and shirt and I love them. Of course, she's referring to what she purchased in the garage sale last Sunday. I can rest easy now knowing the Wraith of God is watching over me while I sleep. There you go. Mark Pengram is here. Leg Kick is here because Leg Kick is almost always here. Randy Howell all the way from Canada. Hello all. Graham Nolan's post about Wally Wood sad end really makes you think. Boy, does it ever. I've got some thoughts about that as well. Because we are going to actually, we were supposed to last week, because of the garage sale, we didn't get to anything except the garage sale. Excuse me. See. So we were supposed to do Wally Wood covers last week. We're doing them this week, and we will talk a little bit about Wally and his sad plight, which actually is a reflection of the plight of, I mean, not suicide, of course, but the plight of many comic book artists in terms of, financial and all that kind of stuff. And it ain't a great way to get rich. That is for sure. It has worked out for some, but certainly not for the majority. Spambot's here. Hopes and prayers go out to Lopez's old noise box. We can tell it's better than it was last Sunday, but it's surprisingly, it's not as good as you would think it should be at this point. Repairman Jack is here. Stealth X5, Bill Maxwell, Pity Maw, Andy Dalif, excuse me. Look at this. Waiting. I started early. Don't give me this like I'm late stuff. My son's texting me. I sent him a message. I'm streaming right now. Because we were going back and forth about comic books, shocker. And so anyway, there's Pantheon. Marcus Killigrew, purveyor of all things pop culture knowledge, is joining us. Fox Mulder is joining us. How about that? Best Age Comics is here. The Geek Easy. Sequential artist, Nordic Nerd. Robert Dones Pills is here. Gen X Catholic. Freak a Boogie. And Stealth, of course, for $2 says hello. Thank you, Stealth. Appreciate it very much. Squeaky's here, which means Geek Avenger can't be far behind. Phantasmagorical is here. How about that? Speaking of that, have you guys seen that there's a which appears to be a Daffy and Porky movie coming out from Warner Brothers? Where did I see like a trailer for that? Oh, I was on I was skimming Instagram this morning. That's kind of like my ritual as I wake up and I'm like, I don't want to get up. So I then kind of start flipping through Instagram videos for like 30 minutes, which is a colossal waste of time, but it allows me sort of to kind of wake up and then I can get out of bed and actually get dressed and all that kind of stuff. So I have to admit, I'm a bit intrigued. I mean, can it be good or will it be crap? I don't know, but if it's good, can you imagine? So I'm going to revisit the trailer for this film on a larger screen and see if my appreciation for it either grows or fades. Let's see here. Moromi is here. There's Geek Avenger. Who else we got in here? Howler 6480. Quoth the Raven, Lewis Bright Raven. You need a co-host for these times, Aaron. Yeah. Too much work. Actually, I don't mind having people on, having someone to talk to, it makes it easier for sure. But then it's like, I got to plan ahead. And you guys, how many times do I have to tell you, I do not plan ahead. Bob Jester 28 is here. Thanks for joining us, Bob. Freaka Boogie says the garage sale was fun. Indeed it was. Everything except one person's stuff has shipped out because this one person did not put in their PayPal thing what they bought. They just said present, which I assume means it's a present for somebody. But so then I had to risk, and I could have done it by process of elimination and go, well, this is how much they paid for it. It's probably this. But I don't want to ship people the wrong stuff. I wanted to make sure. So I sent them an email and said, can you verify what you actually bought before I send this out? So hopefully if it is a surprise present or something, I didn't blow it by emailing them, but they should have put the information, because I did say it like 100 times during the garage sale. Make sure you put in there what you bought. Make sure you put in there what you bought. So I feel guilty, but not really guilty. Sequential Artist says, so excited. I found a copy of Solar 55, pencils by Lopresti and inks by Giordano. Hope that collab with DG was a satisfying one. It really wasn't. I thought he hacked it out. But then again, my pencils weren't that great either. So you can't exactly blame him for not coming in and making me look good, especially at that stage in his career. I'm sure Dick was just like, give me the paycheck, just here. But I did complain about the inks, which probably not a great idea, but I wasn't getting like prime Giordano. Of course, he wasn't getting prime Lopresti, so I guess it's all even. Gary says, good to see you back. I'll be at SummerCon Friday and Saturday this year. I don't know if I'm going or not. I've got to look into that. I keep saying I'm going to, and I haven't, but I will check. Paul Taylor's here, our resident biologist. It is true. I don't do much, but what I do, I do myself. Yeah, let's see here. You know what I really think happened to that? I do correct my mistakes, but I really think that I sent that to somebody either on purpose, forgetting that it was Andy's, or on accident that it got stuck in with some other stuff that I mailed somebody. So somebody's got that Green Lantern drawing. Either they're not supposed to have it or they are supposed to have it, and I forgot they were supposed to have it. But somebody's got that Green Lantern drawing, because I do not. I have checked everywhere. And I just wish they would come forward so it would ease my conscience. I'm not going to make anybody send anything back. I just would like to know, because I cannot figure out where it is or why it is. Paul says, just draw him another one. No, he didn't pay me for it. I'm not going to draw him another one for something that's free. Well, I guess it will. Sylvie Vaughn says, Mark McKenna and Al Milgram really liked your Kit Carter tee. Oh, that's nice of them. I'm pretty sure I know Mark. I don't know that I've ever met Al before. Leg Kick for 5 says, the Lord Pumpkin was fantastic that you recently drew, Aaron. Will you show it on the show? Yes, I will. Actually, I'll show both of them and tell the story. Geek Easy says, I don't have the green. Well, it wouldn't have been something I shipped out recently. It would have been months ago, probably. So if I did, I just can't figure out where it could be. I've checked every drawer, every flat file. I've gone through every pile of artwork, and I don't know where it could be. I've gone through portfolios. It's a mystery. And I do know, you see that the Wraith bust up there, and right next to it is the Headless Horseman action figure. I had a bunch of art sitting on top of that was meant to be shipped out, and the Green Lantern was on there. I do remember that, but then it never got to Andy. So it had to have got shipped out by mistake to somebody else. That's all I'm saying. It had to have. Hey, there's Philip Diaz. Welcome, Phil. I'm going to keep saying this until I actually do it, but I'm going to have Phil, I'm going to have him create me a new intro and maybe an exit video eventually. Eventually. I'm going to do that eventually. Alpha Core. Oh, you mean you got me thinking Alpha Flight, and it's not Alpha Flight. It's Atari Force. You Geek Avenger sent me an Atari Force shirt. I think it was Geek sent me. I still haven't worn it. I still haven't worn it, but it's sitting in my drawer because I can't throw it away because it was a gift from somebody, but it just mocks me every time I open up my t-shirt drawer. It's sitting there. I also got, now I know Geek, you sent me the Uranus t-shirt, right? I've worn that a couple times on the show, so I'm sure it'll be back again at some point. Okay. More or less mail. I have an issue. I've had very, very good luck. I'm not saying that Green Lantern was lost in the mail. I'm saying it was lost to my studio. I mean, somebody's got it. I'm just saying somebody has to have it. And it may have been, I may have sold it to somebody forgetting that I was supposed to send it to Andy. I mean, that's very possible. It could have happened. I guess I should go back and check like all my PayPal transactions and see if anybody, put like Green Lantern drawing, and I'll go, oh boy. Anyway. Louis Pryor says, re-gift the Atari Force shirt to one of the kids who aren't as anti-Atari Force as you. Oh, I should do that. All right, Geek Avengers clearing it up. He sent me the Uranus tee, but it was an Atari Force comic that he gave me. Yeah, it's in the rack back there. Unread, by the way. Not a tee. If you got a tee, it was someone else. Yeah, someone else sent me that. I don't remember who, but anyway, we do have a show to do. And the more I stall, the less time I have before my voice goes completely out. But we're going to get through this. Miss Stippling says, I got my t-shirts. Thank you. Hopefully I don't catch your flu. Well, it's not a flu. I've never had a temperature. It's just a cold. And I did not cough on your shirt. I promise you that. So I did think about that going, am I sending disease out through the mail when I do this? I don't know. I washed my hands and I didn't cough on anything. So, all right. So what are we supposed to do now? Oh, see, it's like I haven't done the show in so long, which is a lie because I did it last week. It's the other shows I haven't done that I skipped because I haven't skipped this show. So, oh yeah, we want to do this. I'm having a heck of a time growing this channel. It's just stalled out at 4.13K. We got to get over like 5 or 6. There's people that like Shane and John, those guys like over like 10 grand. They have over 10,000 subs. Now, granted, I'm not as raunchy and as entertaining in that way as Shane, of course, is the entertainer of the year. But I think this variety show offers a broader spectrum of material for a wider audience. So where's my audience? Tell your friends. Come on, like and subscribe. Let's get after it. Okay, that's enough of me whining, at least for the moment. But let's do this.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Even with a cold, I went to Trader Joe's. Hope I didn't spread it. They were all wearing masks, so I should have just coughed all over them just to rub it in their face. Look at this. Now, I'm not going to eat one of these because I get stuck in my teeth, the almond skins and stuff. Chocolate coconut almonds. These are like an almond joy in like a little tiny package. Dark chocolate, so it's good for you. Coconut, of course, that's like practically a vegetable. That's good for you. Nuts, protein, good fats. RFK Jr. would approve. But I'm not going to eat one of these. Instead, what I'm going to do is Dave Olbrich, the former publisher of Malibu Comics, his daughter, back when she was much younger, got me hooked on Pocky. Now, I love chocolate, but we both agree the strawberry is actually better than the chocolate is. But often I get chocolate just because I'm a chocolateholic. But the strawberry ones are actually better. Now, I have these at my grocery store, which is really bizarre because it's kind of like a little, I think it's like a Japanese thing or Asian thing. I don't know exactly where they come from. But anyway, so that's what we're going to go light. They're like a little gingerbread stick with icing on it, you know. Nummy. Well, while I chew and choke on this, let's take a look at our Frazetta for the day as we continue on his portfolio of Battlestar Galactica paintings. Yes, remember the old TV guides? Did you ever think you'd be saying, remember the old TV guides? But yeah, a TV guide was a little digest-sized magazine you'd buy at the grocery store on the way out. They would have all your TV listings for the week. And so Frazetta apparently was doing these Battlestar Galactica things as TV guide ads. That's why they're all like these, double-page spread type things. Well, that cover or that piece of artwork right there got flipped like the last one did, if you remember, and used on a hardcover book written by Richard Hatch and the guy that created, I can't remember his name, that created the show. I don't know how much Richard Hatch actually contributed to the writing of this book, but his name's on the cover. And they used that piece. But it wasn't until like 2001 or something the book came out. I met Richard Hatch at a Portland show back in the 90s. And let's say that he was drinking early that day. Interesting cat. Anyway, there you have it. There it is. Glenn A. Larson. That's exactly who it was. Look at you guys, so knowledgeable. Paul Taylor saying he actually wrote a lot after the series ended. Well, that particular painting was used as a hardcover, and it was called Battlestar Galactica, like Renegade or something like that. I don't remember. Yeah. So there you go. That's your Frazetta for the day. Paul Taylor for $10 Canadian. Thank you, Paul. I'm not called the problem solver at work for nothing. Send Andy the Atari Force shirt. You're welcome. No. And I'll autograph it. How about that? Well, I send it to Mike Barron, have Mike autograph it, and then send it to Andy. Jimmy Owens says, been ill, but wanted to say hi to you and Shelley. Hey, thank you, Jimmy. I appreciate it very much. Jimmy is a good guy, and we know that you have your health struggles just as Shelley does. And want you to know we appreciate you and your support very much. Thank you. Yeah, that's what I keep hearing, that it was the Book of Mormon in space. I've never read the Book of Mormon, so I couldn't say it for sure, but it seems to be the quote that keeps going on around there. So, and it failed after 1 year. I don't know if that was because of pressure from Lucasfilm suing them, or if it was just lack of interest from the audience. Because I remember as a kid when that show came out, that the debut of that show was the thing, right? It was like, oh my gosh, Star Wars on TV. And, I don't know, was it 78 when that came out? So I would have been, I don't know, 14 maybe. So, it was good enough, but I don't remember falling in love with it, because there's always that, you get the Cylons were cool and the special effects were, for TV were really good, but it was like, it still had that TV hokum part of it, where when you're 12, you're okay with that. 14, 15, you're starting to go, I need a little bit more than that. Thank you. Paul Taylor says they replaced the Battlestar with that horrendous Galactica 1980. Man, I hated that show. I don't think I ever watched it. Was that the one where they had the guy from the Rookies? Not the Rookies. Yeah. No. Adam 12. Remember, there's the blonde guy, Martin Milner, and then the other dude, his partner. He was in that second Battlestar Galactica show, wasn't he? I can't think of his name. Is that the one you're talking about? Where they were on Earth or something, riding weird motorcycles or something? I can't remember, but there it is. Paul Taylor saying you're correct, sir. Excellent. Oh, so Geeky says he got a lot of crap or trouble from the LDS Church for some of the stuff he put in there. He incorporated some of its beliefs and stuff in it. Oh, I see. Interesting. There it is, Kent McCord. That's right. He played Jim Reed, right? In Adam 12. I liked Adam 12. That was a good show. Of course, again, when I was watching Adam 12, I was like, 8. So I do remember one episode of Adam 12. No. It was, well, I can't remember if it was Adam 12 or Emergency, because those two shows kind of blend together. But some kid ate a whole loaf of bread dough, like a teenager. It was really dumb. But then the bread rose in his stomach. So he was laying on the couch going, and he had this like loaf-sized lump in his. I remember being really grossed out when I saw that. And so yeah, that was either Adam 12 or Emergency, one of those two. Yeah, Paul Taylor says the theme from Emergency was memorable. It was a good show, or good music. All right. Well, let's see. How do I want to do this? Because I know what I do. I need to take a look at my campaign, because if I don't do it, who the heck is going to do it? So it's time now for a message from our only sponsor of the show, which is, of course, me. Let's take a look here. We got Wraith of God 3, Fear Hollow, still lying around at just under 76,000. Let's get a couple backers if we can, if you haven't backed yet. Get this thing up over 76,000 so I can feel good about myself. The story is basically the Wraith and Esther, his partner, go after, I don't really go after her, but they encounter and have to deal with the Headless Horseman and a witch. Both characters were part of the Wraiths, and encountered them as a child, as like a 12-year-old kid. And so we say his past is coming back to haunt him, literally, in this story. And as I said, I just was reworking or fleshing out the script, the latter part of the plot, which has been written, of course, but I go in and do the script in segments, because I like to script some of it, and then I go back and draw, and then I go back and script some more, and then I go back and draw. And that way it gives me, I can stretch out the time before I actually have a finished script. And that allows me to catch mistakes, or, to ponder things and go, God, that doesn't really work. That needs to be fixed, rather than just sit down over 2 weeks, and hammer out a script, because I would go back and rewrite it anyway. So I do it in sections like this, and it gives me more time, like I said, to reevaluate what I've written. And so I did about 8 or 9 pages of script this morning before the show, and it's right at it's the climax of the story. And I'm telling you guys, you won't be sorry. So anyway, we have 4 cover options here. This is the EC variant, the 1972 Marvel box cover variant, and of course the great Chris Stevens painted cover. Here's some of the goodies on the inside, colored by Jason Wright. We have another mystery villain here. We learn a little bit more about him in this chapter. Look at, there's horses, well-drawn horses, I might add, in this. Regardless of what some people on the internet may say, I think we all know who the best horse drawer is. And just saying. It looks iffy as whether or not we will reach this stretch goal to get David Williams' backup story in this book. What I am contemplating, though, is the last month of the campaign, opening one on Kickstarter and seeing if I can raise the extra money over on Kickstarter to get this baby over 100 so we can include that story. I am contemplating many, many things. But as part of this campaign, you can get Wraith of God Nouveau print, signed and numbered, limited to 500. The Wraith of God Roughs Volume 3, this is layouts for the graphic novel. So all the page layouts, well, 48 pages of layouts to the graphic novel, which is 64 pages. So it won't be every single page, but it'll be a good portion of them. And these are printed to order. So if you don't order them on the campaign, your chances of getting one is slim to none. So if this is something you're interested in, I would seriously think about adding it to your order. And these come signed and numbered, as I said. So we have shot glasses. There's a series of 6 planned. This is the 4th, the Nightclub. The Nightclub, of course, is a mysterious super team as part of the Empire Universe catalog of characters and stories. You can get their first appearance in the Garbage Man trade paperback. Second appearance is in, of course, Wraith of God #1 in the epilogue. And then their first full story is in Wraith of God 2 Blood Hunters as one of the backup stories in that. Over 100 pages of comic story and art in Blood Hunters. That, talk about a value. So anyway, you can get the shot glass here, and eventually we're going to have a shot glass holder that holds all 6 of the shot glasses, and probably will do a flask of some sort with maybe a Wraith of God emblem burned into it or something cool like that. So we'll see. 3 poker chip commemorative set. These are the clay heavy poker chips, the fun kind. You can get those with the Wraith Esther and Keon's Werewolf. And of course, if you're missing your Wraith of Gods, you can order them right here, #1 or #2, the award-winning wraparound cover. Of course, you can get these also on my website. They're a little more on the website, but you get them right away. If you order them through the campaign, you got to wait for them. So, and I do have all of the covers for Wraith of God 2 still available on my website, as well as Kit Carter, both softcover and hardcover, and movie poster and sketchbook are still available on my website. You'll find a link for my website in the description of this video, as well as a link to this campaign in the description of this video. So you guys, check this out if you haven't done it already. Spread the word. Let's see if we can get this thing to 100K so we can get that David Williams story in there, which, by the way, obviously, you can tell by looking at it. Where are we? There it is. That's pretty cool stuff. It's more straight superhero type stuff, cosmic superhero type stuff. So it is, it's quite different than Wraith of God. But here at Empire, we like to give you guys a variety of comics and subject matter, just like on this very show. It's a variety show. It's the Carol Burnett show on YouTube. That's what, without the singing and probably without the comedy, probably without the good acting, but everything else is exactly like the Carol Burnett show. And Empire Comics, that's of course my label. You can see the sign right above my head there. It says Empire Comics. We try to give you a variety of stuff to read. And rather than trying to put out a bunch of books that I can't really do, I can use backup stories to get some of my other characters out there. And that's what we're doing right here with The Origin of Empirus. This, of course, is David's version of Eon Chance, a character we've already introduced in Wraith of God Blood Hunters. So anyway, if you're like scratching your head going, man, I don't know what he's talking about. Dude, go to my website and order your back issues, or back this campaign and get your back issues. Either way is fine with me. I'm happy to keep you guys in books. That's what I'm trying to do. And there you go. So let me show you a piece of artwork. I probably shouldn't be doing this, but I'm not going to publish this, or pardon me, I'm not going to put it on social media or anything like that. Just you guys get little flashes of pages along the way. That's my little reward for you for watching this show. So looks like we have the witch putting a spell on the Wraith. Esther looks troubled there in panel 2. Kind of like this panel. You got the Wraith's head up here, and then Esther's down here. Cool lighting effects. And then we have Esther praying, going to the source, and the witch doesn't like prayer. She doesn't like that. So anyway, I'll tell you, I don't know what's I can tell you what I enjoy doing more, but I don't know which is more time consuming, doing like urban backgrounds or woods and jungle, because all them leaves and stuff back there, that, it takes time. Now I like it better because it's more unstructured. It's more like noodling work as opposed to, perspective and all that kind of stuff. But, interesting thing about this page is I mostly inked it with a brush just for the heck of it. Well, I even shouldn't say that. This panel, and this panel were all brush. And the other ones were pen. You know why? Because I just don't care. I like playing around, and there's my dog. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's like he's part of the show, right? Where would he be without him going nuts? That doesn't help much, I know, but why do people insist on delivering stuff on Sunday? I don't know. I don't get it. Anyway, there you go. There's a little preview for you. That is hilarious. I watched that not too long ago. Tim Conway is also good in McHale's Navy. Well, McHale's Navy, God, I haven't watched that in ages. I974 says he's late. Hope you're feeling better. I am feeling better, but as you can tell, my voice is still not where it should be. I'm not going to flash you, no. Where's Tim Conway? Tim Conway is no longer with us, Maromi. Wow, talk about insensitive. TLA says romance comic backup story when. That's actually a pretty good idea. I like that. I know my wife would be Shelley. She loved Carol Burnett. She would smack me if she was here. She is here, but she's not right here. Pull my ear. Okay, what are we doing here? Drawer is a word. It is something in a desk. That's a drawer. You open it and put your drawing pencils in it. Did I say drawer? What can I tell you? Sequential artist for 10. Thank you very much. Do you have a Bible overview story for Wraith of God or any of your IPs? Yeah, I do. I'm not going to go that specific. I do have an outline of where I'm going with everything. So yeah, I do have that. It's a working knowledge of it. And it's dumb not to necessarily write it down completely, which I don't always do because you do forget stuff. But I do know where I'm going. Yeah. And in terms of all my IPs that have been developed have all been developed for the most part over the last 30 years. And I just never had the opportunity working in mainstream comics to do anything with them. So like, I'm not sitting around going, oh, I got to come up with a new concept. I've got stuff that I've already developed and in some cases written outlines for, but just couldn't get anybody to pick them up. And as I've said before, I was this close to having Kit Carter in Mad Magazine. And then that, of course, Mad Magazine went south. As I was contemplating, I was actually talking with Bill Morrison, serious conversations about doing it. In fact, I think we hadn't written any contracts up or anything like that, but I'm pretty sure he was like, let's do it. And I'm like, okay. And then I remember Larry Gaiman going, are you sure you want to give up? Because if you do that and crazy, DC will own your, own Kid Carter. And then at the time I was like, well, it's better than not ever getting published, right? But course, I didn't know anything about crowdfunding at that point. It was way before that. So now I'm actually glad I kept it because I was able to do the graphic novel. But it kind of would have been cool to be in Mad Magazine, don't you think? And then Wraith of God, I was talking with Dan DiDio, and I know we could have got that done. But when I talked to Dan DiDio about it, is he wanted to make some changes to it, which means he probably wanted me to take the religious stuff out, the Christian stuff out, which I wouldn't do because that's the entire heart of the story. But we never got any farther than that. And then, of course, he ended up getting let go. And then I'm trying to think, did I have anything else? I tried to get Warriors of the Light, which I don't like the title. I think it's not aggressive enough. So I'm going to change it at some point, but that's kind of the working title. And I had that over at Vertigo. I'm not straight up. They turned it down. The fools. But again, I've still got it. So that's my fantasy book that I may do next. In case you're wondering. I love Dan DiDio. Now, I know Graham Mullen doesn't like him, and there's people that don't like him. He was never anything but great to me. And so I love Dan. I should have him on the show. I'll reach out to him. I should have him on the show. You guys are talking about Carol Burnett. They are. Vicki Lawrence and Carol Burnett. That's funny. Well, they sort of made Nightcrawler a Catholic or something, didn't they? But I mean, there's one thing to say that they're, but in Wraith of God, I'm using Bible verses and all sorts of stuff. So it's kind of prominent in it to a point that they might not like it. But I don't know. I can't say for sure because Dan never got back to me on what the changes he wanted because we talked about it. And then I remember bringing it up again. And I go, yeah, you said there's some changes that you wanted to see made in it. And he's like, yeah, he goes, I don't remember. He goes, I have to go back and look at my notes. And then both of us got doing other things. And then eventually Dan got let go and it just never. Craig69 says, Warriors of the White. No, Warriors of the Light. The light coming down. But it's like it needs something. It needs to be punchier than that. So, Vicki Lawrence is a guest for the South Carolina Comic Con. Really? That's bizarre. I mean, you see like television personalities, like kids from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory who are now like my age or older, things like that. It shows, but Carol Burnett, I don't see the connection why they'd have her on. She wasn't on any sci-fi or anything show, was she, that I'm not remembering? And she was like in Mama's Place or something like that. And then she was Carol Burnett. That's weird that she would be at a comic convention. No, I'm not, but I didn't think a fantasy story, like a Lord of the Rings type thing, I couldn't see DC proper doing. Excuse me. So I figured Vertigo was the only way to go. Anywho, okay. So that's kind of my my thing on Wraith of God. Got a little preview art there. It's moving along quite nicely. So anyway, yeah, please consider backing if you haven't done so already. And please tell your friends if they haven't that that's something they should take a look at. Now, here's something that we should probably take a look at. It's been sitting here for 3 weeks on my desktop, and I've either forgotten to use it or I haven't had time to squeeze it in. But now we're going to do it. All right. Now, far be it from me to accuse anybody of swiping anything. You never know what is in someone's mind or, when they do something or see something. But, and of course, I'm not a guy to ever cast dispersions on someone big like Rob Liefeld, but let's take a look at this. And you guys tell me what you think. Is this a swipe or just a strange coincidence? Of course, on the left is Michael Golden, one of his G.I. Joe, probably from the G.I. Joe annual would be my guess, but I don't know 100% for certain. Then, of course, New Mutants 94, big Cable drawing there. I got to say, those guns are practically identical. And yeah. Well, as we're contemplating the Freakaboogie saying, hey, that's no Wolverine. Wait a minute. Here it is. Not a coincidence. Okay. I don't know. I'm just saying. Maybe. Phil Diaz, Zaid Comics for 10 says, after you all back Wraith, go check out Psycho's Slumber. Letters are all done, going to print soon. It's the last few hours on Kickstarter, but you can grab the Doug Mankey cover on Indiegogo too. Thanks, gang. Check that out. There you go, both Kickstarter and Indiegogo. But apparently the Doug Mankey cover, Doug's a good dude. I like Doug. Is only available on the IGG campaign, so you should go there and check that out. Psycho Slumber, just type that in, it'll take you right there, or I'm sure there's a link in here in the chat already. Mark is saying that's a swipe. The Image guys love gold. Yeah, of course it is, because this gun is exactly the same and in the exact same position. So that's not a coincidence. Now, if it had been a similar pose, a similar gun, but not exactly the same thing, then you're kind of like, okay, but this, yeah, I don't know how this is not a swipe. But, we like to point these things out just to, because I'm sure Rob doesn't give a rip what I think, and nor should he. But I just find it interesting. I've swiped accidentally once. Well, it wasn't accidentally because I didn't even know the other thing existed. It was just those, both similar ideas and similar execution of similar ideas. And anytime I've swiped, I've done it not like a pose or something, but like an entire cover as a tribute or homage to somebody. And that's just what I'm saying. What's the difference between a swipe and homage? Swipe is you're trying to get away with something, and homage is you're openly paying tribute to something from your past, or that was, like a comic cover you really liked, or an artist you really liked. And almost always you'll put, like I put Lopresti after Wrightson. I've done that a couple times where I've done I didn't really swipe, but it was more of an homage to, but I felt it was close enough that I didn't want people to think that I was, trying to get away with something. Anyway, there you go. Fromage, of course, is cheese in French. An homage is I think if you actually looked at the definition, it'd probably be paying tribute to something. Swiping is basically stealing, because you're too lazy to do it yourself, or you're not good enough to do it, so you take someone else who did it. And so, yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. But anyway, to each his own. There's certainly not disparaging Rob. He's way more successful than I'll ever be or ever have been. And so there you go. But regardless, that is, in fact, a swipe and not a strange coincidence. Anyway, so that was good times. Now let's take a gander at our good friend Wally Wood. Let's do that. Do I have an intro for this? I think I do. Don't I have an intro for this? There it is. And it makes you feel like it's a real show with an intro, right? What are we going to start with? Let's start with down here at the bottom and work our way up. This is early Wally right here. And I think on Graybeards at some point we had a discussion about this mechanical stuff back here. Who invented this look? Was it Frazetta or Wally Wood? But Wally Wood was doing it before Frazetta's used it on his Buck Rogers covers, so we can only assume that Frazetta got it from Wood. I don't know where Wood got it from, if anybody, or if he came up with it himself. This logo is crooked on my, and it's driving me nuts. Okay, there we go. So there you go. Vampires, truth or fiction. This, of course, is Captain Science, because we always want to trust the science. But this is very early Wood. And look at how good the figure drawing is. This is like 1952-ish. And one thing, Wally was just, he just a guy could really, really draw. And a very talented artist, ahead of his time, certainly. I mean, you take a lot of guys from the 40s and 50s, and you say, they wouldn't pass the test in the 90s or the 2000s, or now we're in the 2025s, whatever. But Wally Wood had that kind of talent, kind of like John Buscema had that kind of talent that would sort of transcend eras. A lot of his best stuff came from his work at EC, so we're going to look at several of his EC covers as well. This, of course, is Weird Science. I love this. Look at this. Alone in space with 50 frozen dolls just waiting to be thawed. Now let's see. Eeny, meeny, miny. Oh, baby. It was a different time in the 50s. So there you are. You've got all these frozen babes, and this, I don't know, is that Mr. Freeze? Looks like a bald guy with goggles. That could be a prototype for Mr. Freeze. He's frozen all these chicks, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to get to the planet. Let's see, which one do I want? And I suppose if you got tired of one, you could freeze them, bring out another. I mean, crazy. But there you go. Fantastic. You know, the thing about Wally Wood, the amount of detail and effort he put into his covers, even those interiors. I mean, this guy really, he really put the work in. Now, granted, EC paid pretty well considering, but how good was it really? It wasn't that great. I mean, it was still comic book wages, but EC did pay well, so that might have inspired some of these guys. And plus, they had so many good artists working for him. I'm sure it was like, I'm not turning it into a piece of junk. Look at Paul Taylor ruining everybody's fun. That will work only for one generation. You need equal number of men, too. Yeah, he would be right. But what was the Beach Boys saying? 2 girls for every boy. Ding, ding, ding. Yeah, okay. That would be okay. I'm just kidding, of course. Pity Ma, don't come after me. Just kidding. All right, now this I was going to say this doesn't really constitute, it isn't really a cover, but it is. Now, if you have not seen Wally Wood draw the Spirit, these have been collected, like the Spirit in space. It was the weirdest thing. The Spirit went into space. Eisner's Spirit went into space, and Wally Wood drew these issues. And these were newspaper inserts, which is amazing to me that that he was able to, not Wood, but Eisner was able to sell the Spirit to newspapers as a insert newspaper comic strip. So it was like a comic book. I mean, it wasn't, stapled or anything. It was all in newsprint, and it was all the size of, you fold out newspaper page. But these were these were inserted into the paper. And so Eisner must have just made a fortune on these. I mean, because that's where the money was syndication in newspapers. Now, I don't know how many papers these actually got into, but anyway, so this is like the cover to this newspaper insert comic. And it's all Wally Wood, and it's just fantastic. Now, some people might be able to correct me now. I don't know if Eisner drew these and Wally Wood inked them, or if Wally Wood just drew everything and inked it. I think it's the latter. I think that Wood penciled and inked these, but Eisner might have penciled them. I don't know. I'll bet Marcus Killigrew knows. What? Really? See, Jules Pfeiffer wrote those spirits. How about that? I didn't know that. There it is. Yeah, so it was 8 pages per week as an insert. I mean, that's just amazing. That's a lot of work too. Depending on how far ahead you were when your deadlines when you start, but you might get lucky. But like I said, Kitchen Sink reproduced these. I've got them. And I think there's actually a paperback out there that's called Spirit in Space or something like that, that just collects all the Wally Wood spirit strips from this run. So do check those out because they are available in reprint and stuff like that. Now, as I said before, with whoever we did last, Severin, wasn't it? Yeah, it was John Severin, wasn't it? Was it Severin? No, it was Jack Davis. I started in the Golden Age, but crossed over into the Silver Age, and we're trying to do this by decades, or comic book ages. But some of these guys worked in both, so you got to, So here's Wally Wood doing some work at Marvel, and he did quite a bit of work at Marvel in the 60s. So he did several issues of Daredevil, and he's also the dude who designed the red Daredevil suit, because in issue 6, up through issue 6, Daredevil was in his yellow acrobat outfit, where he had the yellow suit, but then it was kind of like black tank top and shorts underneath the yellow. But Wood did the covers, and he also did the interiors on several of these Daredevil issues. And he showed up, he did a Doctor Doom story in Tales to Astonish, and that might have been 1970. So he worked all throughout the decade at Marvel, doing jobs here and there, as well as working on his create our own stuff, which he did in the 60s and 70s as well, and did some stuff for was it Charlton? Who did he do the Thunder Agents for? I can't remember. Is that Harvey? Was that its own thing? Tower Comics. I don't know if that was his label or if it was somebody else's. Of course, Marcus Killigrew would know. Here we go. Another. Wood was the first artist that Stan Lee gave credit to on the cover. How about that? Geez, I'm so tired. Hang in there, man. Hang in there. You want to stay awake for the Jack the Ripper stuff for sure, which is coming up next. So hang on. This is a great one here. This is Incredible Science Fiction number 33, another EC comic. Look at that funky mechanical space stuff back there. It's just nuts. It's great. Now check this out. See these little bands that go through here like this? And then how he even took the time to put the shadows underneath them from the light. I mean, it does the same thing up here, giving it more depth. These are incredible. This is the kind of stuff I still want to rip this stuff off. Even though it's dated, but it's cool dated. It's not, you don't look at that and go, oh, that's so corny. You look at it and go, that is so cool. Past Master Jan has jumped in here. Thanks for joining us, man. Appreciate it. There's Bullet. Henry Jeremick says, Woody complained about Stan Lee. Woody had no story, so he would plot it out, probably, without being paid. Hence the complaining, I imagine. Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, he had no story from Stan, so he had to plot the whole thing out. And then Stan would, that's what Stan did, though. I mean, Stan said a lot of stuff, but what I think happened seems to be the I wasn't there, obviously, but this seems to be the consistent story is that Jack, we need a Doctor Doom story this month. Or Jack, what do you want to do this month? I want to do a Doctor Doom story. Okay, go for it. And then the artist would just absolutely do everything, hand it over to Stan, and then he would just put dialogue in over the top of it. So, I mean, I'm sure early on, like early on, when they're forming all these books and stuff, Stan, they would have story meetings and say, oh, yeah, we'll try this and do this. But as they went along, Stan had less input into the stories, and the artists were given more responsibility at plotting that stuff out and probably not getting paid like they should have for that. Yeah, it was, the Marvel style, but the Marvel style you're supposed to provide a plot, just not the dialogue, right? And then you do the dialogue after. Like when I worked on Damage for DC, we did it Marvel style because Dan wanted to emphasize the artists more on these projects. So that was cool. So I get Damage and I would get plots, and they would basically be, okay, this happens on page 1, this happens on page 2. Then you'd get, okay, Damage fights Superman. This is from Robert Venditti, who is a terrific writer, by the way. And so but like on several of those issues, he'd say, page 8 through page 15, Superman Damage fight. And at the end of the fight, it needs to be this. And so then I would have 8 pages where I would just choreograph the entire thing. And which I found sort of invigorating, I mean, as long as I got the fight scene back to where it needed to be when the dialogue and, the story continued to move forward, that was fine. And so then Robert would come in and dialogue what I'd drawn. But he did give me a plot, whereas, I don't think Stan did that very often, after the beginning anyway. Here's one for piracy. Arg. Sometimes Wood's figures would be a little stiff, like this guy back here, just sort of, this sort of straight on, instead of turning the torso a little bit to give it a feeling like it's a little bit more movement involved. Like this, he could have thrown this shoulder back a little bit more to give a little more oomph. I mean, it's all very well drawn, but a lot of times kind of stiff in the poses. But, excellently rendered and realized, though. Draftsmanship on these were terrific. All right, here's one of my favorite EC Wood covers. Mainly because I just love that monster. This thing is just, that's so Wally Wood, that monster right there. This cracks me up. Look at this guy's like shooting laser into its mouth. And of course, the girl in the foreground. Oh, but look at this gadget. I think to myself, if I had drawn one of these things around Kit Carter's neck, it'd drive me nuts having to draw that every single time. Funny thing is, if you're a collector like me, these books right here are not that expensive. I mean, considering they're Golden Age books and even decent grade ones, they're in the hundreds of dollars, not thousands of dollars. But it's good family fun. I liked Wood as a finisher, like inking, like Rudy Nebres. I like Rudy Nebres as a finisher because if you had a really dynamic artist drawing underneath Wood, because his Wood stuff was very illustrative, but it wasn't really all that dynamic. If you had like if you took Buscema and then had Wally Wood ink him, that would look pretty cool. I don't think they ever did. I don't know. Maybe you guys know, but I can't think of any example of where Wood inked John Buscema. Interesting. Okay, here we go. Another EC, but hey, we go where the good stuff is. Look at that monster, that zombie dude. Look at right. So he's decaying out there in space. He's got like, his half of his face is melted off. My gosh, that's a great idea for a story. Again, adapting another Ray Bradbury short story. I mean, I do have Kit Carter in the Astro Zombies. Just cough something up. Sorry about that. Anyway, okay. So, I don't think Wood inked Big John. He inked Colon on Captain America, though. That's interesting because I have those issues of Captain America, those Gene Colan issues. He slicked him up, though. That would be an interesting take. I'd have to go back and look at those. But as I recall, they looked pretty darn good. Okay, now this, I love this because I love their, this kind of pre-Jurassic Park dinosaur and what everybody kind of envisioned them with the kind of egg heads, these T-Rexes with these egg heads. I loved it. Frazetta did the same thing. I don't know, man. These would have been, if I saw space as a kid in the 50s, saw space stories with big dinosaurs on it, I'd have been all over this book. Allosaurus, T-Rex, whatever. The thing is, they had like these egg heads. It's kind of how they used to draw those dinosaurs. And now it's a completely different look. A much cooler look. Whether it's accurate or not, who knows? Of course, Paul Taylor, you're a biologist, so he says he's going to Allosaurus. I'm not going to argue with you. Carrick says, oddly, they might be right about the dinosaurs being more fatty. It just cracks me up. Don't get me started on dinosaurs, but it's like the farther we get away from the facts, the more interesting the stories about dinosaurs become. So I don't know what to believe anymore. That's why I just like the way they look and kind of leave it at that. All right, two more, but these are really, really, really good ones. Now, I do own this one. Now, the unfortunate thing about the copy I have, there's a color touch on it right there on Fu Manchu's nose. This is like 19, I was going to say 52. It might be 53 though, or 51, somewhere in that neighborhood. It's very early Wally Wood. And he did the entire inside of this book as well. Now, I bought this in a phone auction, if you can believe that. Before the internet, folks, there was a phone auction set up through the Buyer's Guide of Comic Fandom, which was the weekly newspaper that I've mentioned many, many times. And somebody had an ad in there and essentially said, okay, these are the books, these are the conditions, and it was pictures of the books, right? A full page ad, and the conditions the books were in. And there was a phone auction, and so you would, it was the weirdest thing. So, each comic book had its time slot. And so I was sitting there by my phone waiting for the time slot for this to come up because I've always wanted this book. I love this cover. And I wanted to get this book. And you just don't see this book very often. And printed by Avon, so it wasn't like DC or Marvel type distribution. This was not, it's not like a ton of copies floating around. And so this guy had a VF Plus copy. But he said with, this mild restoration. And so I was like, at the time, I was like, I don't care. I just want a copy of the book. And I'm still glad I got it because I still don't know if I'd have a copy of this book if I hadn't. But so I'm calling this guy on the phone and bidding, right? And I think I paid $300 for it. But I was bidding and I would call the guy, and then he'd like put you on hold, I think, and then like take another call for someone else bidding. And then he'd say, okay, the bid's up to $275. And I said, okay, I'll bid $295, whatever I bid, And they said, and then we waited, and the time ran out. And he says, okay, but then he goes, oh, wait a minute, I'm getting a call. And you're like, dude, the auction is over. And he goes, no, I'm going to take this call. So he takes this call and somebody bid it up after the auction time was already over. And so I ended up having to pay $300 or $320, something like that, to get it. Because he took a bid off a guy after the auction should have been over. But anyway, so I've got it, and it's a really nice copy. And it's not slabbed. It was before CGC. So I can actually thumb through it if I want to. Well, I don't. That's the thing. It was a phone auction. He could have just, could have totally just screwed me over. But how would I know? You're exactly right. How would I know? But basically, when the guy's on the phone saying, well, he just bid $300, you got to go $310 if you want it. And then I'd be like, all right, fine, $310. So, well, maybe the guy was honest. Maybe he wasn't, maybe he was. I have no way of knowing, but that was just how things worked back then. It was like, how else do you do it, right? I mean, I paid, I was willing to pay it. So, I wouldn't have paid more than I felt it was worth. So, but I probably ended up I paid, $25 more than I should have because he took an extra bid, allegedly. Anyway, now here is the most famous, and probably the second most famous EC cover. Of course, the first most famous EC cover is the guy holding the woman's head that he chopped off with an axe. We know that classic one from Shock Suspense. But this one, Shock Suspense Stories number 6, this Wally Wood, I never quite figured out what was going on here because they have hoods like the KKK, but they're not wearing white robes or white hoods. They have black hoods on. So are they some sort of satanic cult and she's like the sacrifice or something? Because it's not like they're, these are like KKK members and they've got this chick who, was maybe dating a black guy or something, and they're going to take her out and whip her. Look what she's wearing. She's wearing like some sort of like ceremonial sacrifice gown or something. So I'm not sure what's going on here, but it is creepy. And this is a super expensive book because the cover is so iconic. Paul Taylor says, I think the higher up in the clan have colored hoods. Not an expert. Don't want to be. Black hood, you're colorblind. Okay, they're dark gray. Okay, pardon me, Roy. Jeez. Look at Art of Roy is constantly criticizing me. This guy, I knew how much the book was worth. I'm just saying that my bid was less than what my top dollar was until the guy took the extra call. I knew what it was worth. I wasn't bidding blindly. My goodness. I don't think they are shadows, Roy, because this guy's hood is gray and yet the rest of his suit is white. And he's got a light right here, which would mean that would be white. So I have to ask Marie Severin. She's the one who probably colored this cover. But anyway, this dude has was that like a scorpion or a spider on his hood? So I don't know. I don't know what we're supposed to. I guess you'd have to actually read the story. And I have not. So anyway, regardless of what they were wearing and what color their suits are or anything else, that's the Wally Wood collection of fine covers. And it is kind of sad because we did talk about Wally Wood earlier about Graham's post. They ended up killing himself. I think Wally Wood was kind of a miserable dude. I don't know if you could blame it all on comics. But I mean, he was doing some pretty raunchy porn that I accidentally stumbled across a few years ago. And I was like, ugh. So he was extremely talented for sure. But I mean, I guess Graham's point was that, comics are just, have never traditionally been a great paycheck. And they never really were for a lot of guys. And I mean, look at even John Byrne now. He couldn't get work in mainstream. He's doing his own X-Men comic, which he's not publishing. And then, as I understand it, he's selling the originals to those pages. And that basically is paying him to do the comic, which is brilliant. I mean, now clearly, I keep thinking, I've got this World War II Captain America story I want to do with zombie Nazis. But then I'm like, I'm not going to get the money that Byrne would for those X-Men pages for my Captain America World War II pages. So don't know if it'd be worth it doing it. But if you're retired and you're just, it's actually not a bad strategy to kind of do that and then like sell the original pages. Just throwing it out there. No, his Sally Forth stuff was like, I guess it would be R-rated because she was nude or whatever, but it wasn't really raunchy. It was like Playboy as opposed to Wii magazine or something, This was this was hardcore, like some Disney stuff. God, it was shocking, quite frankly. But anyway, so there you go. Now, where are we on the old clock? Okay, we're doing fine. My voice is hanging in there. Barely, but I want to talk now. I want to talk about Jack the Ripper. And because I think it was Blue Boy who alerted me on Graybeards, or either Sunday Show or Graybeards, that they had discovered Jack the Ripper's identity through DNA testing. But is that really true? Let's take a look. And here we go. Does a new genetic analysis finally reveal the identity? Oh, I'm sorry. I got to also share this with you, don't I? My apologies. Hang on a second here. All right, there we go. Let's try this again. Okay, now let's try this. Does a new genetic analysis finally reveal the identity of Jack the Ripper? Let's take a look, shall we? Forensic scientists say they have finally fingered the identity. I don't know if I like that. Fingered the identity of Jack the Ripper, the notorious serial killer who terrorized the streets of London more than a century ago. Genetic tests published this week point to Aaron Kosminski, a 23-year-old Polish barber and a prime police suspect at the time, but critics say the evidence isn't strong enough to declare the case closed. So what's the problem? Here's the problem. The results came from a forensic examination of a stained silk shawl that investigators said was found next to the mutilated body of Catherine Eddowes, the killer's fourth victim, in 1888. The shawl is speckled with what is claimed to be blood and semen, the latter believed to be from the killer. 4 other women in London were also murdered in a 3-month spree, and the culprit has never been confirmed. This is the first time Kosminski has been linked to the crimes, but it is the first time the supporting DNA evidence has been published in a peer-reviewed journal. Now, when this was first released by this guy, the evidence had not been peer-reviewed. And so people were like, wait a minute. There's quite a bit of doubt surrounding this shawl, if it actually is one of the victim's shawls, which, I mean, that's a pretty good question, because it's like, why would you have saved something like that? I mean, I can see the police having it, and maybe they just kept it in their files. and then someone finally got it from them. I mean, I suppose that's possible, but kind of hard to prove, I would think. So anyway, the first genetic tests on the Shawl samples were conducted several years ago by Jari Luhelian, a biochemist at Liverpool John Moores University in the UK. But he said he wanted to wait for the fuss to die down before he submitted the results. That right there sounds ridiculous. But author Russell Edwards, who bought the Shawl in 2007 and gave it to Luhelian, used the unpublished results of the test to identify Kosminski as the murderer in a 2014 book called Naming Jack the Ripper. Genetic scientists complained at the time that it is impossible to assess the claims because few technical details about the analysis of the genetic samples from the Shawl were available. Let's see. Also, they were hookers, right? Kept it in their files. Gross. Well, I mean, that's the thing, right? It's like, and they're also saying that there is living relatives that are both related to Kosminski, the guy they think is the killer, and to this prostitute that he killed. So she had kids, or was she somebody's aunt? I mean, I don't know. That's not clear. But anyway, now this new paper that he submitted for peer review lays some of this out to a point. And what the doctor said, I'm not going to keep trying to pronounce his name. I have no idea. And his colleague, David Miller, a reproduction and sperm expert. I didn't know you could be a sperm expert. I mean, is that like, I mean, that's pretty precise. But anyway, at the University of Leeds in the UK, claim that this is the most systematic and most advanced genetic analysis to date regarding the Jack the Ripper murders. They described the extracting and amplifying the DNA from the Shawl. The test compared fragments of mitochondrial DNA, the portion of DNA inherited only from one's mother, retrieved from the Shawl with samples taken from living descendants of Eddowes and Kaminsky. The DNA matches of that of a living relative of Kaminsky. They conclude in the Journal of Forensic Sciences. Okay. The analysis also suggests the killer had brown hair and brown eyes, which agrees with evidence from the eyewitnesses. These characteristics are surely not unique, the authors admit in their paper, but blue eyes are now more common than brown in England, the researchers note. Which means what? Nothing. The results are unlikely to satisfy critics. Here we go. Key details on the specific genetic variants identified and compared between DNA samples are not included in the paper. Instead, the authors represent them in a graphic with a series of colored boxes. Where the boxes overlap, they say, the Shawl and modern DNA sequences matched. So they're actually drawing like a little child's diagram of information, but they're not giving you the actual information that they're using to create this diagram. The authors say in their paper that the Data Protection Act, a UK law designed to protect the privacy of individuals, stops them from publishing the genetic sequences of the living relatives of Eddowes and Kaminsky. The graphic in the paper, they say, is easier for non-scientists to understand, especially those interested in true crime. Now, Walter Parson, a forensic scientist at the Institute of Legal Medicine at Innsbruck Medical University in Austria, says mitochondrial DNA sequences pose no risk to privacy, and the authors should have included them in the paper. Otherwise, the reader cannot judge the result. I wonder where science and research are going when we start to avoid showing results, but instead present colored boxes. Very good argument. Hansi Weisensteiner, an expert in mitochondrial DNA, also at Innsbruck, also takes issue with the mitochondrial DNA analysis, which he says can only reliably show that people or two DNA samples are not related. Based on mitochondrial DNA, one can only exclude a suspect. In other words, the mitochondrial DNA from the Shawl could not be from Kaminsky, but it could probably have also come from thousands who lived in London at that time. That's pretty damning right there, if that's accurate. Other critics of the Kaminsky theory have pointed out that there's no evidence the shawl was ever at the crime scene. It also could have been contaminated over the years. So the new tests are not the first attempt, and listen to this. The new tests are not the first to attempt to identify Jack the Ripper from DNA. Several years ago, U.S. crime author Patricia Cornwell asked other scientists to analyze any DNA in samples taken from letters supposedly sent by the serial killer to the police. Based on that DNA analysis and other clues, she said the killer was the painter Walter Sickert. That's a great name, isn't it? Sickert, for Jack the Ripper, though many experts believe those letters to be fake. Another genetic analysis of the letters claimed the murderer could have been a woman. So there you go, folks. Science. Trust the freaking science. That was pretty. That was totally, almost completely debunked, actually, Paul. The evidence for that was not good. Okay, so I'm not done with this. I think it's important that we take a look at and see who actually might have been the Ripper. And I'm not saying Kosminski is not the guy, because he was one of the top suspects back at the time. But what I am saying is that this author that released this information could very easily just be moving things along in a direction he wants them to go, because he wants to be the guy who identified the killer. So again, we don't know what his motivations are. So can we trust him? I don't know if we can or not. Let's take a look at this article, which I find very interesting. We got actually some pictures of some of these guys. Okay. Montague John, these are the top 5 Ripper suspects. Now, this I love, because this is ridiculous. Although there may not be any concrete scientific evidence against him, wow, what a way to start. The fact that Jack the Ripper's murders in London's East End ended after Druitt's suicide convinced one London detective that Druitt was in fact Jack the Ripper himself. So this dude kills himself, and after he kills himself, there's no more killings. So it must be him, even though there's no other evidence supporting the fact that he was Jack the Ripper. Oh, boy. Now, they do say, though, that he was an Oxford-educated man with a fairly good family, although some believed that he was sexually insane. I don't know what that means. He was born in Wimber Minster, Dorset. During his lifetime, he once worked as an assistant schoolmaster. Like, that has any bearing on anything. Now, they say he resided a few miles away from Whitechapel, but on the other side of the Thames River. I don't know, this is weak. But they say he was also seen in the Whitechapel area around the time of Jack the Ripper murders as well. On November 9th, 1988, 7 weeks after the murder of Mary Jane Kelly, which was the last victim, Druitt's body was found floating in the Thames. Investigators believe that the cause of death was suicide and that he had been at the bottom of the river for at least several weeks around the time of Mary Jane Kelly's murder. So he might not even been alive when she was killed. Anyway, very weak. And he's one of the top 5. Come on. Now this guy, Carl Feigenbaum, this guy is creepy. Another likely suspect for the Ripper murders was this 54-year-old German merchant sailor, Carl Feigenbaum. He was known to be a psychopath who confessed to mutilating women, and even his own lawyer believed that his client was Jack the Ripper. Now we're getting someplace. Feigenbaum went by many aliases during his lifetime and was known to be working as a merchant on ships that had been docked near Whitechapel. Records prove that Feigenbaum was working in Whitechapel on every single date of the 5 Jack the Ripper murders in London's East End, and he and his coworkers were often seen at nearby brothels as well. After Feigenbaum immigrated to America sometime around 1890, he was, and this, okay, so let me clarify this. He was there on ships working, but he wasn't a citizen. And then he finally emigrated officially to America sometime around 1890, where he was convicted of murdering a woman by the name of Juliana Hoffman and was sent to the electric chair for the crime. Experts also stated that there was striking similarities between London's Jack the Ripper murders and the slaying of Juliana Hoffman. Now that sounds like could be a guy that you want to, keep an eye on. All right, now here's our main suspect. Paul Taylor. You knew it was a seaman, of course. Well, you got that privilege though, right? Zeno the Stoic says, I think it was Shane. Okay. Aaron Kosminski. That's this dude right here. Several highly esteemed police officers believe that the Polish barber Aaron Kosminski was behind the Jack the Ripper murders in London. And the fact that his mitochondrial DNA was found on Catherine Eddowes' shawl certainly doesn't help his case. And of course, what that also means is he could have just been a customer. If that DNA is an actual match and the shawl is actually authentic, he could have just been a customer. It still doesn't prove that he killed her, because how often would she have cleaned her shawl if she's a prostitute in Whitechapel? Ugh. Anyway, Kosminski, I'm not sticking up for the guy. I'm just saying. Kosminski was born sometime between 1864 and 1865 in Russia and had settled in London in the early 1880s. Kosminski was Jewish and was living and working as a hairdresser in Whitechapel during the time of Jack the Ripper murders. Interesting. So he actually worked in Whitechapel cutting hair. He apparently had a very strong hatred of women. That'll do it. Had homicidal tendencies and was even sent to an asylum in 1889 where he died shortly after. So the last murder was 1888. He went to an asylum in 1889. Police documents from the time of Jack the Ripper murders revealed that officials suspected a man by the name of Kosminski, although Aaron Kosminski wasn't pinpointed as the suspect until many years later. It seemed like they had a lot of good suspects, and surprisingly, they were unable to sort of get anywhere. Francis Craig, how about that? Let's see what he has to offer. Here we go. Sequential says they need to screen that author to exclude himself from connection to the shawl. He could have an ulterior motive. Yes, obviously he could. And that's why I say, you can't necessarily trust the science. They tested the DNA, and I think it was that Polish dude. Yeah, okay, that was a while ago, Geek. But yeah, we've already got through that, but thank you. Appreciate the 5. And those of you who are into this kind of thing, and I mean, I'm not really into it. I haven't really studied it, but I do find it strangely fascinating. I read a Reader's Digest version when I was a kid. It was in Reader's Digest of the murders, and it was an excerpt from some book. And it was in ghastly, grim detail. And I remember it just freaking me out as a kid. But at the same time, I was like, it was such a scary mystery horror film kind of thing, right? And it was just really fascinating. In recent years, many ripperologists have believed that Mary Jane Kelly's husband, I'm not sure I buy this one, Francis Spurzheim Craig, was behind all the Jack the Ripper killings. This is interesting, though, because Craig was working as a reporter at the time of the murders and was even covering the police courts and inquests on the Whitechapel murders, as well as other crimes in London's East End. Craig was born in 1837. Okay, he was well-known Victorian social reformer, blah, blah, blah. Some people suggested that Craig was suffering from mental illness. Again, some people suggested. What does that even mean? He lived in Whitechapel and Mile End Road, which is just 7 minutes away from the first Jack the Ripper murder scene. And in 1884, he married Elizabeth Weston Davies, who is believed to have been a prostitute who went by the name of Mary Jane Kelly. This dude married a prostitute? Did he not know she was a prostitute? How would you not know that? He lives in Whitechapel and he marries a prostitute. Wouldn't everybody in Whitechapel be going, dude, I was, last week? I mean, okay. Anyway, he lived in Whitechapel and Mile End Road, which is, okay. Theories suggest that once Craig discovered his wife was working as a prostitute, so he didn't know she was a prostitute when they got married. Why didn't anybody tell him? Because apparently everybody else must have known. And he went into hiding in the East End she went into hiding, under her pseudonym, Mary Jane Kelly. Craig started plotting her murder, but disguised his involvement by killing other prostitutes in the area beforehand. That sounds a bit of a stretch to me. if you're planning to kill your wife, you're going to kill 3 other or 4. Was it, how many was there, 5 victims? 3 other or 4 other women, and like really grotesquely murder them. And so you could really grotesquely murder your wife. I don't know. That sounds weak to me. Weak, I tell you. Tom Bruce says, "Little bit, you take what you can get." Well, I guess, man. But guys, we're a newspaper reporter. How would he not know that this? He's a newspaper reporter in Whitechapel. How would he not know this chick's not a prostitute? I don't know. Craig 69 says, "I'm a Craig descendant. We are crazy." Okay, all right, that may be it. All right, now here's Walter Sickert. Let's see what they say about Walter. In the book Portrait of a Killer, Jack the Ripper, Case Closed, author Patricia Cornwell pinpointed artist Walter Richard Sickert as the real Jack the Ripper, and even claimed to have found DNA evidence which links Sickert to at least one of Jack the Ripper's letters. But even before her book, Sickert was believed to have been behind the Whitechapel murders since as far back as in the 1970s. Wait a minute, so he wasn't a suspect until the 1970s, so like, 90 years after the fact, or 80 years? Sickert was born in Munich in 1860 and emigrated with his family to London in 1869. Sickert was known for painting prostitutes. I guess if you needed nude models and you're an artist, that might have been the way to get them back then. Sickert was known for, and some believe that he used insert clues and symbols about the Jack the Ripper murders into his artwork. Some experts suggest, they use that same line on those alien TV shows where they say, some alien experts suggest, like, okay, guy's an expert on aliens. That's like being a cryptozoologist. There is no such thing as experts, unless you're self-proclaimed expert. And I'm a self-proclaimed expert on cryptozoology, by the way. So therefore, I am a cryptozoologist. So anyway, some experts suggest that the clues are so similar to the actual crime scenes that only the true murderer could have painted them. It is also believed that Sickert was impotent after having several surgery on his penis. Why would you be having several surgeries? I hope he... Ugh. Experts have always suggested that Jack the Ripper may have had some kind of impotence problem, which is why he targeted prostitutes so violently. Many serial killers throughout history have been proven to be impotent or suffer from sexual problems, as the act of killing becomes their only means of sexual fulfillment. Ugh. Cornwell also found mitochondrial DNA on several of Jack the Ripper's letters, which were a match to several letters written by Sickert. But it still wasn't enough to convince experts that Sickert was behind London's Jack the Ripper murders. Unfortunately, Sickert passed away in 1942 and took many of his secrets to his grave. I don't know. This guy, Carl Feigenbaum, seems like he's the most likely, just based on, what we've seen here. Now, there's one other thing I want to explore. And this comes from a really bizarre website. No, I shouldn't say bizarre website, but called the Jack the Ripper Tour with Ripper Vision. Okay, was Jack the Ripper an American? All right, let's take a look at this real quick. Okay, his father. Okay, here we go. Richard Mansfield. Mansfield was an American actor born on May 24th, 1857. So in August of 1988, Mansfield brought his new play to London and set it up in the famous Lyceum Theatre in the West End. It was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was the performance. And I think we've seen this actually dramatically played out in, was it some Jack the Ripper movie where the American actor playing Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was one of the suspects. But here's the dumb thing. The reason he was suspected was because people were saying that only a real killer could do a performance like he did when he became Mr. Hyde, which is just absurd. But there's very little. It says here, it's unknown whether the police took this letter or someone wrote a letter to the police saying, "You've got to check him out. He's got to be Jack the Ripper. No one could portray a killer like him on stage without really being a killer." You know, it's called acting. What is interesting is that there were no murders in October of 1888. Nobody knows why. Had the police interviewed or questioned the real killer and scared him off? If they did, it didn't scare him off for long. In November, the Ripper struck for the final time with the murder of Mary Jane Kelly. Shortly after this murder, Richard Mansfield closed down his play and left London to return to the States. He died in 1907. Sounds like just odd coincidence to me and just silliness. Now, a couple of these are a little bit more interesting. Dr. Francis J. Tumblety. Another infamous American suspect was Dr. Francis J. Tumblety. He was a quack doctor from New York who made his money selling dodgy Indian herbal remedies and tonics. He was a habitual liar with an obsessive sense of self-importance. Okay, that's anybody on the internet practically except me. I'm completely honest and have no ego at all. It was reported that he had deep hatred of women, especially prostitutes, and his movements could never be ascertained. I don't know what that means. His arrival into London from the States heralded the start of the Whitechapel murders. Okay, that's a nice little coincidence. He was arrested for acts of gross indecency and was almost certainly a suspect during the Ripper murders. During the Annie Chapman murder inquest, it was claimed that an American doctor had been seeking body parts for medical research. This led to the belief that the killer might be a medical man seeking to take body parts for free. Shortly after the Jack the Ripper's final murder, Tumblety fled the country and moved back to America. It was rumored that Scotland Yard went to the States in hopes of interviewing this strange man, but unfortunately all attempts to trace him down drew a blank, and Scotland Yard came home empty-handed. But he was considered a prime suspect by the special branch, the eyes of the special branch, whatever that is, and was even named a likely suspect by Inspector John G. Littlechild. Here we go. H.H. Holmes. In recent years, an American serial killer called H.H. Holmes has been put in the frame as a likely candidate to be Jack the Ripper. Dr. H.H. Holmes is regarded as America's first ever serial killer after he confessed to murdering over 20 people in his infamous Illinois hotel in the late 19th century. Holmes' technique was to turn his hotel into a murder castle, which was full of booby traps and torture devices. Oh my word, where he would skin and dissect his victims. In fact, you could argue that H.H. Holmes was the inspiration behind the modern Saw movie franchise. Wow. Although Holmes and Jack the Ripper appeared to be very different kinds of killers, both were cold and calculating. Wow, okay, duh. Almost methodical in their approach. There's also a similarity to the victims. The final Jack the Ripper victim, Mary Jane Kelly, was murdered and mutilated not in the street, but in her own home. This does show a clear escalation in the Ripper's MO. He had turned from a street killer into a man who took his victim behind closed doors. If H.H. Holmes was the Ripper, the murder of Mary Kelly may have inspired him to take the next step and create his murder castle in Chicago, where he could continue his gruesome work uninterrupted. In 2018, the great-grandson of Holmes uncovered circumstantial evidence which could link his relative to the Jack the Ripper letters, and it's possible that Holmes may have been in London at the right time to be the Whitechapel Ripper. If this is true, then it puts Holmes in the likely position to be Jack the Ripper. Perhaps one of these three men we have mentioned here today could have been the Ripper. Dun, dun, dun. So there you go. That is a thorough, fairly thorough investigation of Jack the Ripper. So it's up to you to draw your own conclusions. But I think Curious Potato says, I thought Holmes was sensational, but there is an escalation. Yes. Paul Taylor says, this is like Bigfoot. The thing about Jack the Ripper, I think, everybody would love to be the one who said they solved the crime, right? So you've got to take some of this forensic stuff with a grain of salt, until you can prove the authenticity of it. And then secondly, I think there's also the cynical part, like me, who questions everything. It's one of the great, it's almost like a monster movie. I mean, this character has become so big in mythological standards, even though it's an actual thing, but it's just the legend has grown. We had a Star Trek episode around it, right? I mean, I don't think people want it to be solved, right? Because as soon as you make this person say, okay, it was this dude that did it, now he becomes a human being and not this sort of monstrous demonic thing that, skulked around Whitechapel in London in the fog. And it takes away the horror and mystery of it all. And so I think there's a lot of people that probably don't want it solved just for that reason. But it is, Robert Doan's Pills says, if the Ripper bagged and boarded his comics, I wouldn't rat him out for murder. What if he got him CGC graded? Well, I don't disagree with that, but I think it was the devil through somebody. Obviously, nobody in their right mind or with any spiritual morality at all would do such a thing. Custodian Ken, this is interesting. I watched the documentary about Holmes and truly believe it was him. Could be. I mean, being an American and then like getting out of town would be a logical explanation why they couldn't catch him. They did a show. I want to say Geraldo hosted it, but the 100th anniversary of Jack the Ripper, which would have been in 1988, would have been the 100th anniversary. And they had this panel of experts, and they went over all the suspects and all the evidence they had at that point. And they all came to the conclusion that it was Kosminski. He was in that, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but they felt he was the likely suspect. But based on what I'm reading now, he doesn't seem like the most likely guy. There looks like there's other people that could have been, could have been more likely suspects. Now, of course, it's all circumstantial, and we can't, and unless they can come back and really define that DNA evidence, because it sounds like a whole lot of nothing, at least, by the stuff they didn't publish, makes it seem like they're sort of like, oh, that doesn't really agree with our narrative. Let's not publish that part. And so it's interesting. And obviously, the farther we get away from it, the more likely it is that we will never know for sure. 80s Sojourner says Holmes was known as the devil in the White City. The White City referring to the marble buildings of the newly rebuilt Chicago after the fire. Whitechapel, White City. Yeah, the Holmes character was, that's just horrifying. That is very strong circumstantial evidence right there. And we already know he has because that's the one interesting thing about the Jack the Ripper murders was there was 4 or 5 of them. I can't remember. I want to say 5, but maybe it was just 4. And then they just stopped. Okay, why would he stop? Well, what if he went to America and then continued doing it until he got caught and then was executed? That makes sense. But why would he just stop is very, very peculiar, very weird, interesting. So, all right. Now, Kelray's are going to start an argument here. He says, I saw that show, and it made absolutely no sense according to the evidence that they picked him. Well, they probably picked him because he was a serial killer. And, that and happened to be or possibly was in Whitechapel at the time of the murders. But, You could also argue that he was there at Whitechapel. The murders occurred, and that inspired him then to go home to the United States in Chicago and become a murderer as well. So, Henry Jeremick, he actually believes that Scotty was actually the Ripper from Star Trek, so you don't think Piglet was the actual murderer. Interesting. Yeah, it's the Inglewood Post Office. Vandals burnt it down after the murders. How about that? Maybe. But I'm just saying there's always an angle, right? And so without that is a good move. You guys want good Jack the Ripper movies? Time After Time, starring Malcolm McDowell, Mary Steenburgen. No, is that right? Is that her name? Yeah. And David Warner as Jack the Ripper. And so Malcolm McDowell plays H.G. Wells. And the Ripper uses his time machine to go into the future to escape, and then he goes after him. It's I really liked it, and of course it was directed by Star Trek II director that guy who I love, and I think is a great director, and now I'm put on the spot and I can't think of his name. I'm an old man. Also, a very small film that came out, I believe, in '88, because I believe it came out on the Thank You, Moromi, Nicholas Meyer. He had just directed that when Star Trek II was offered to him. And when they approached Ricardo Montalban to play Khan, he didn't want to do it because he had been doing Mr. Rourke for so long on TV that he said he didn't feel like he could, be this bad guy anymore. And so he asked who was directing the film, and they said Nicholas Meyer. And he had just seen Time After Time, he said, and loved it. And so he was like, oh my gosh, I want to work with this guy. So that sort of prompted him to take the role. Or so he said. He actually said this on the Tonight Show. I watched that episode. I remember it. I know. You guys don't know the pressure. Like, there's 350 people watching right now, and I'm trying to talk off the cuff, and then I feel the pressure, the pressure just weighing down on me, and then boom, I can't remember the name. That's my excuse. The other excuse could be just I'm getting old, but I don't want to talk like that. So anyway, of course, Sequential's saying that the mirror universe Scotty is more likely Jack the Ripper than the regular. That's probably true. What? Your brother refused to go see Wrath of Khan with me because Montalban was in it? Are you kidding me? He chews up and spits out the scenery. He's awesome in this movie. He makes Shatner look like he's underplaying. I mean, it's awesome. Anyway. He was also in Escape from the Planet of the Apes. Yeah, Escape from the Planet of the Apes. So there. I don't know what the point of that was, but okay. Here we go. Murder by Decree, also a very good Jack the Ripper movie. It's probably closer to the actual truth. Will your family cover up because Prince Albert getting a prostitute pregnant? I don't know. I looked at the evidence. I didn't even bring up Prince Albert because he's they have this list of 15 suspects, and Prince Albert was one of them. And I just, other than he was kind of nuts, I don't even think he was in town. I think he has a rock solid alibi for, unless you say the royal family hired someone to kill these prostitutes. But I don't know. I thought the evidence that I saw anyway was pretty weak on Prince Albert. Remember that old joke? Do you have Prince Albert in a can? Well, yes, I do. Well, you better let him out before he suffocates. That's what we used to do when we were kids. Call people on the telephone. Is your refrigerator running? Yes. Well, you better go catch it. Sorry. That passes for early 70s kids humor. There it is. See? Yeah, Prince Albert was in the can at the time. Oh my gosh. All right. It's 5:30. I have done this for 2 hours. I didn't think I'd make it. Here's the thing. I'm going to save Bigfoot for next week because Jack the Ripper was sort of our Bigfoot this week. So, but I will say this. There's one other movie I wanted to bring up to you guys. And maybe some of you have seen it. Let me pull it up here real quick, if I may. This movie came out the 100th anniversary of Jack the Ripper. Okay. And it's really good. No, that's not it. Hang on a second. There it is. Jack's back. Okay. 100 years ago, in the city of London, in the East Side slum of Whitechapel, a man shocked the world by murdering and raping, mutilating 5 women. Okay, it was 5. He was never caught. Jack's back. Dun, dun, dun. Written and directed by Rowdy Harrington. Rowdy Harrington. James Spader plays a twin brother in this movie. And it's kind of jarring until you figure that out, what's going on. But I like this movie. So, and again, I haven't seen it since it came out in 1988, which would have made me 24 years old. So I'm old enough to know a good movie from a bad movie, but my remembering of it, I remember it fondly. However, I'm a bit of a Jack the Ripper fan. So I like Jack the Ripper movies. And so I may have given this more credit than it deserves, but I did go see it with a friend who also thought it was very good. So check it out. And then if it's terrible, I guess you can blame me next week. You must find the Hasselhoff. Wait a minute. What are we talking about here? Wasn't there a David Hasselhoff film with Jack the Ripper in Lake Havasu? Oh my gosh. No. Oh no. Oh no, there can't be. And that has got to be worth seeing just to see it. Custodian Ken says Ripper fan ditto. I don't know if saying you're a fan of Jack the Ripper is the right thing to say, because you're not going to be a fan of a mass murderer, but a fan of the mystery and the whole horror. Like I said, it almost has manifested itself into this kind of timeless mythology, and it's fascinating. And I always read stuff about Jack the Ripper to see if more evidence they could have had, what could have motivated someone to do this, all that kind of stuff. The lore, thank you. That's what we're trying to say. Yes, fan of the lore. Bridge Across Time with David Hasselhoff, baby. It wouldn't be, Angela, it wouldn't be public domain. It's not old enough. So, but again, time after time, if you haven't seen it, highly recommend it. Jack's back. I liked it. Murder by Decree, people say that's kind of an average Sherlock Holmes movie, but again, deals with Jack the Ripper murders, so it has that extra layer of interest in it. So check that out if you will. All right, everybody. Hey, guys, thanks for joining me. I'm glad to be back on air, alive and well. And so we'll be seeing Graybeards this week. We'll do the same thing we were going to do last week, which was Birdman characters. And what does that mean? That means characters with a bird's name in their name, like the Crow, the Falcon, Robin, Hawkman, Hawkgirl, the Blue Falcon, Birdman. Those are all these type of things that might be able to be drawn. So check that out. Tuesdays of Professionals will return. I guess Art and I were both out sick on Tuesday, People are demanding Bigfoot, but I'm telling you, it's going to have to wait till next week. Jack the Ripper was our Bigfoot this week. So, and that saves me from having to dig up a bunch of new videos next week. Anything to make my life easier. That's what it's all about. Actually, Barron wrote a book called The Grackle, which is a bird. He's like a secret agent kind of thing. Penguin, there you go. Ooh, I love the penguin. I like the penguin. Angela, do I have super chat? I might. Let me see. Randy Howell, Canadian 2, he says, will a demonic saucy Jack appear in Wraith 4? Well, the Wraith is right around 1883, and Jack the Ripper was 1888. So Sequential says they need to screen that. Okay, we already did that. Good. Okay, so I've got everything else. Thank you, Chocolates, for reminding me of the super chats. We don't want to miss any of those. I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. Creative Faye, yes, I did. Thank you very much. I haven't opened it yet, though. So I will open it here soon. I'm kind of waiting to see if I should open it on Graybeards because I assume it's a drawing, right? So thank you for that. And yes, I will get to it, and we'll do the big reveal on Wednesday. What did I just say there? The Wraith forced the Ripper to emigrate to England. The Wraith. That's right. He couldn't catch him, so he just moved his problem over across the ocean. Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining me. Appreciate it very much. Thank you for all the super chats and the participation in the chat. I could not, of course, do it without any of you, and I greatly appreciate it. So enjoy the rest of your weekend. Hopefully, I'll be 100% here very, very soon. This has lingered on way too long. But remember to back Wraith of God 3. If you haven't done so, please check it out. The link's in the description of this video. Please hit the like and subscribe. I need the subscribers, or so I'm told. And then also, if you're missing any books from the Empire Comics collection or just Aaron Lopresti in general, sketchbooks, posters, prints, check out my website. They're all there. The link's in the description of this video. So there you have it. Good night, everybody. And we'll see you next time right here on Aaron Live.